The 30-day trial at www.totaldrive.co.uk.
We're live now, do you say? We're live on Facebook. Wave and say hello, everybody. Yeah! As you can see, we've got an enthusiastic crowd. Good morning. My name is Bob Morton, audit trainer. Been in ADI for 33 years. Oh my goodness. Client-centered learning. I think there's lots of different ideas about what it is and what it isn't, and a lot of confusion. And what I do deal with is a lot of failed standards checks from people who just haven't made the switch. Still using a lot of the old techniques, and there's nothing wrong with instruction, by the way, but they're doing some things okay and then missing the point. What's the whole point of it? Why the change to the standards check? Why the change to the way we work? Because it's a modern way of teaching. We should be making the lesson fit the learner. Yet I still observe a lot of lessons where the ADI is making the learner fit the lesson. The amount of conversations I have about, oh, I've got my standards check coming up. All right, okay, what's your plan? Oh, I'm planning on doing roundabouts. Why is that? I like roundabouts. What about your pupil? I haven't chosen the pupil yet. Grief. That's never going to work because you're shoehorning somebody into something and it's never really going to fit. So we've got to make the lesson fit the learner. So that's what client-centered learning is all about. So is it different to instruction? Is it different to coaching? Yes. Coaching is likely where the person doing the coaching has zero subject knowledge. What it is a process to help the person collect their thoughts and organize what they're going to do next. So they're making all the decisions. It's possible that the coach might have some subject knowledge, but the subject knowledge is not critical at all. It's the process, the coaching process and the way of being that makes it happen. Instruction, well, your subject knowledge should be 100%, so I'll put likely 100%. So we're putting the learning in that circumstance. Coaching, getting the learning out. Instruction, we're putting the learning in. All we do is we see the learner as an empty vessel and we pour in our righteous wisdom and knowledge until they're full. But it doesn't always work. So, you know, if you ask the learner, do you understand? How many times have you had that? Do you understand that? And they don't. But they don't want to go, no, because they feel silly. So what's client-centered learning then? Is it one or is it the other? Well, it could be both. Client-centered learning is about, in driver training especially, it's about helping the learning happen, but in the context of being in a safety-critical environment. So your job is to keep things safe. 100% of that responsibility lies with you at the start, and 100% lies with them on test day. So it's transferring that responsibility, but in a safe way, and managing that process. You're a driver training professional, you should be helping learning happen, not standing in the way. And I see instructors getting in the way of learning happening all the time. Well, all my other pupils understand this. They don't understand it, they're the problem. No, not at all. So the lesson must fit the pupil, it mustn't be the other way around. So that's what we're talking about here when we talk about client-centered learning. We're being assessed on that. The DVSA are pretty much using the old core comps safety procedures, but they want the learner involved in it more. That's what it's about. So that's what our working day should all be about. If you make the change, you know, those of you who haven't already, it's worth it in terms of the engagement you get from your pupils. So it's about getting the learning out rather than putting it in. But of course, to do that, we've got to get buy-in from the learner. And that's difficult, isn't it? You know, when you say, what do you want to do today? What's the most common answer? I don't know. And it's accompanied with what? Yep. If you press them, you'll often say, well, you're the instructor, I thought you'd decide. So it's getting over that hurdle. Now, why are they saying they don't know? Is it because they don't know? Sometimes, but most times it's because they're scared. They don't want to commit to something in case you go, well, that's a stupid idea. They're scared of getting it wrong. They're scared of judgment. So we've got to find ways of getting around it. You've done something, you say, what do you think we should do now then? Still nothing. Well, I'm not right sure. What have we learned from this? Well, I don't know. Again, the reticence is to do with not wanting to look foolish, not wanting to say the wrong thing. So to get over these things is difficult. So we need to help them be involved in a practical way so that they feel it's their lesson, it's their process. It's not just, being grilled about stuff. So when we get these questions and they go, I don't know, well, offer options. Well, here's some things we could do. Eventually, when you ask the question, what do you want to do today? Instead of saying, I don't know, it'll switch to, well, what's my options? That then very quickly changes to, well, I've been thinking about this. What I'd like to get out of it today is, and it's a very simple process, but it sometimes takes a little time and a bit of perseverance. If the learner is empowered, if they feel it's their process, life becomes incredibly easy. They become so easy to teach. So we've got to get them involved. So offering the options is an easy way in. If you're asked a question, the easy way out is to say, I don't know. We learn it at school. You boy, what's such a, I don't know, sir. And the teacher moves away. So it's a defense mechanism. If we say that, we're off the hook. So get them involved. The easiest way is through reflective logs. Now, some of them will look at that and think, well, that looks like homework to me, mate. I don't fancy it. So do it in a verbal way. What was your favourite bit last time? What was your least favourite bit? Was there anything that excited you? Were you surprised by anything, in a good way, in a bad way? Was there anything that happened in a different way to what you were expecting? So that then can open up a lovely conversation about, well, what was the outcome you were expecting? That then helps you, and if you get feedback from that, that then helps you to say, well, what's the outcome we're expecting out of this next piece of? So we're getting that buy-in just gently, just opening the door, allowing them in. It's painless, it's enjoyable. Having them plan the lessons. How do you think we should do that? What sort of route do you think we need? If we were going to just focus on roundabouts, where's the best place in the town to do just roundabouts? We might come up with something. And if we're doing just roundabouts, of course, we don't want traffic lights and pedestrian crossings, so we want to try and avoid them. Now, this is a #1 mistake that I see from driving instructors. We're doing a roundabouts lesson, yet we're crossing traffic lights, pelican crossings, all manner of stuff. And the pupil gets into trouble. So we start out by doing roundabouts. There's one plate spinning. Now we're dealing with pedestrian crossings. Now we're dealing with traffic lights as well. And it becomes too much, particularly for the ADI involved, and the plan just comes apart. And then we haven't got a plan B. So we've got to think carefully about that. That's all part of it. So the pupil planning the lessons, the pupil planning the practice areas. If they can't do it, that's fine. Just say, well, what about this area? I've even done that where I've got it on Google Maps and said, where's the best place here? If we just wanted to do left turns, I mean, you can't do left turns ad nauseam, or you end up disappearing up your own backside. But what if it's this fella? Now what are you going to do? Well, even this fella can be going, so why is he doing this? This is the tension seeking, is it not? So if a pupil like this suddenly has control of the lesson, this sort of behaviour stops. So anybody who has any, I hate to call them special needs, they're just needs. Anybody who's different, the more control you give them, the more normal, for want of a better word, they become. So the most difficult pupils to teach are the ones that you want to give the most control to. That also means, as a driver training professional, you've got to make the steps that you're taking much smaller till you find a way of working that works for you both. Now I'm skipping, there's a ton of detail on my website about all of that. So I've touched on practice areas there, but let's have a little look at that. So it's not a route. When I talk to ADIs about, what's your route? They've planned it out beautifully to last 40 minutes so that I start at the test centre and I think I arrive back at the test centre. And I can do that if I follow this route. So, okay, how many roundabouts? What's your subject? Roundabouts. How many roundabouts is there? Well, there's a couple. How far away are they? 5 or 6 minutes. What are you doing in the 5 or 6 minutes that you get there? What do you mean? So if you're the examiner, what do you think? You're sat in the back thinking, well, this is dead time. What's the point of this? People might make some mistakes. We're not picking up on it because that's not on our agenda for today. So if you're driving to an area, that's a whole little lesson plan on its own. Each little burst of activity has to have an outcome that we're expecting, and then we have an outcome that we got. We compare what we got with what we were expecting. If the difference is too big, that then drops to the 4th line in lesson planning, adapting the lesson, because clearly what you've just done hasn't worked. If you move on, you will fail. It's that simple. Not only in terms of the standards check, but in terms of delivering what that learner needs on that day, in that moment. That's gone wrong. If you leave it, people goes home thinking, oh God, I made a load of mistakes, I'm crap, mate. Not good. So the standards check and client-centered learning approach are very closely aligned. I love the new standards check. It's far superior to the old check test because it's checking whether learning's happening and whether it's meaningful learning that's fitting to this person next to you on this day at this time. So isolate the topic of the day. Now that can be hard depending on where you live. You know, if you live in Milton Keynes, there's not much chance of doing lessons that don't involve roundabouts. So, you know, roundabouts might want to be early on so that we've mastered roundabouts. So never bring stuff into your practice area that you've not mastered yet. That's a recipe for disaster. Yet I see it all the time. You must make the practice area work for the pair of you, in terms of you being able to control things and in terms of them being able to learn in an effective way. So the drive to the location, that's a separate route. That's a separate subject. That's a separate little lesson segment that has to be taken care of, as is the drive back. Should never be dead time. They're paying us a lot of money for this, so they should be learning all the time. So, contrast on that's a bit, right? Can you see that okay? So just here, there's a small roundabout. So if I'm doing lessons on roundabouts in Pontefract, I start here, I turn left at that roundabout, and I'm back to there very quickly. And I've not done anything other than roundabouts. We have a chat about how that's gone, what's happening next. I would never dream of doing another loop without a conversation, because otherwise I'm just doing what I've just done. If I do what I've just done, I'll get what I just got. If I get something different, the learner's done some learning, but how have I demonstrated competence? I'm a passive bystander here. So we have to have that conversation. That was great. What do we like about it? Okay, what's next? What do we expect from the next loop? So I'll explain why when I talk about chunking. That's a little chunk of activity. The next chunk of activity needs to be planned based on what just happened. Not what you've already planned, but what's just happened. In light of that, what do we need to do next? So we're dynamic all the time, adapting the lesson. The number one reason, by the way, for failure on standards check. Lesson not adapted when needed. So once I've done that left loop, I can go up here, come down and do a right loop. So I can get back to this roundabout very quickly. I can escalate the thing forward because this is a bigger roundabout, a bit more of a challenge. But if things have gone pear-shaped, I can go back to basic junctions here. There's a crossroads there, one there, and a one there. I can take a step back to junctions. Up here, if I needed to, I could go back to moving off and stopping. If that was really required. Hopefully it wouldn't be. So within my grasp here and within my control, I can offer options on what we should do next and where we can do it. And it's tight and things happen, bang, 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 bang. And the learning just spews out of the learner. It takes a bit of practice. You can't really see that, can you? This is another one that I would use. So this is a little more difficult. So I see an ADI using this, and they'll go all the way up here to these roundabouts. What's wrong with just going up and down here, going back and forward? And having a little stop at the side, or if you don't want to stop, have the chat as you're going between roundabouts. What's just happened? What are we looking for next? What level of help do you want? So we either want an escalation in the challenge, or we want less help, or we want more help or less of a challenge, depending on what's just happened. This one, basic junctions, moving off and stopping here, goes uphill, downhill. Basic junctions here, slightly busier junctions here, very busy junctions here. So I can move the thing back and forward to my heart's content. If we master everything, there's some crossroads a little further up and some traffic lights a bit further up from there. In between there, there's some pedestrian crossings. But there is a route around here missing the pedestrian crossings out. So I'm isolating what I'm working on. That's helpful for the learner, massively, because they're not juggling a load of balls in the air at the same time. And again, that piece of road I showed you there and the second one's there. So this is the whole town. Within a few minutes, I've got everything I could possibly need, including a motorway, should I need it. So, to be client-centered is all about being centered on the client. What do we need now? What do you need from me now? So that's the question we need to ask ourselves all the time, whether it's on standards check or whether it's in the real world. What do I need to do now? What would be the most helpful to the people? And the easiest sort of source for that information is sat right next to you. So I sit in the back of lessons and watch, and you know, people tell me, I think I was client-centered there. Oh, yeah. How many questions did you ask the learner about how it was going and what they wanted to do? Huh? You didn't ask them any. So how can you possibly be client-centered if you're not talking to the client? We have predetermined ideas about what we should be doing, and it's well rehearsed, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with instruction, but those days are behind us, and we're going to have, as an industry, we're going to have to move away from it, because that's not how modern education and training works. So obviously it concerns us that we want to score well, not only in the real world, but on our standards check. So here's our scoring zone. So what's the difference between a client-centered session and one that isn't? Whenever somebody sends me a form, I ask that they don't tell me what's happened. They just send me the form. And I want to have a look at it. And I said, send me it without the examiner feedback at the bottom. Let me see what's happened. A non-client-centered lesson goes 1, 1, 2, 1. We've not involved the pupil either at all or not enough. So if they're not their goals, how can the agreed lesson structure be right? Generally we get a 2 because we've thought about the lesson route, so it's a good place to do it, but we're only getting a 2 because we've not used it well enough. Yes, it might be the perfect place to do it, but what have you done with it? And then the 1 was the lesson plan adapted, because there's only one of us involved in the planning here, in reality. That then impacts monstrously on the rest of the form, just like this. So there's no good plan. What it means is we've gone off with a plan in mind. It's probably the instructor's plan. Was the trainer aware of the surroundings of the pupil's actions? Was sufficient feedback given? Was it timely? Was it accurate? And was sufficient feedback given to help them understand any safety critical incidents? If we're not making a good job of this, we're also not adapting the lesson. It's not the right one for the pupil. They weren't encouraged to take responsibility for their learning, and they weren't given appropriate feedback during and at the end. So if you're doing a bad job here, if you start off by having a plan that's just done by you, they're going to be 1s. There's 10 boxes there. You've got 10 points. You need 31. You've only got 7 boxes left. You need 3 in every box. It's not going to happen. However, if they're 3s, you're on 30 points, you only need another 1. Well, if they're 3s, you're guaranteed at least 2s in the others. So that's an easy A. That's 44 points. So that's the difference. Involving the learner critically has an impact on your score. I mean, hugely. So how are we going to do it? How are we doing for time? Oh, all right. Might even be on time. So becoming more client-centered, and as a byproduct, a nice byproduct, becoming more successful on the exam. How? Involve them. If you're not good at involving them, get good at involving them. That's where you should be focusing your practice. How am I going to get more out of the pupils? Because when you get more out of the pupil, you'll get more out of the session. You'll get more out of your day's work. You'll arrive home less tired. I'll wager an awful lot of us get home at the end of a day's work, pour yourself a glass of wine or beer, and you're asleep before you finished it. Because you've done all the thinking, all the planning, and it's not good for you. So you should arrive home. I'm not saying you should be bursting through the door going, hurry, I'm home, not that sort of stuff. But you shouldn't feel burnt out. Now, if you get the client to do more of the work, it means you've got to do less of the work, so you're less tired. Plan effective practice areas. Make sure that we're trying as much as we can to isolate the subject matter for today. And then chunk the training. I'll talk about that in a second. So it's simple. This job is not hard. It's hard to do really, really well, but the job itself is not hard. The basics of it are straightforward. Set a plan, you and the learner between you. Now, it's okay if the learner says, I don't know, and you come up with some options and they choose one. That's fine. Or if they still say, I don't know, if you say, well, should we do this then? Yes, you've still got agreement. Then execute the plan. So that plan would also include what level of help, what sort of challenge. Are we going to go left for a little bit, then right? What do you reckon? So you then execute the plan. Short burst of activity, 8 to 10 minutes. 5 minutes is probably enough. And then a review. Now, pull over for the review. That's okay. The DVSA is saying they want wheels turning, if possible, but they're not saying you can't stop. If you need to stop to review, stop. Depends on the people, doesn't it? Some of them can happily process information on the move, some can't. If you brought somebody who can't process information on the move, stop. And also, let the examiner know that before you even go for the exam. Before the wheels start moving, tell them they can't cope with discussions on the move, so we'll have to stop for that. Are you okay with that? Ask the examiner. Say, yeah, of course. As long as you don't stop too long. And the review is what we're doing working? And it's a yes or a no. There's no maybe. A maybe drops into the no column. So if it's yes, well done everybody. Woohoo! Big pats on the back all round. What's next? So if it's working, we either need to elevate the challenge or we need to reduce the help, or both. But you can't just do what you've just done, because if you do what you've just done, you'll get what you just got. Who does that help? So what about if it's not working? Well, we either need more help or less of a challenge. Or in either of those cases, we're binning it because either tick, we're finished with it, or it's just too much for us today and we need something else. It's all come apart at the seams and we need to take a backward step. We're doing T-junctions, we need to go back to turning from the main road. We're doing crossroads, we have to go back to T-junctions. We're doing roundabouts, back to you know how it works. So there's no maybes, so it's either working or it isn't. And in either situation, we're adapting the lesson now based on what we've just had. So it's no good just doing the same thing, because what you're doing then is you're learning by rote. And that's old, isn't it? It's also not very effective. Although we do a lot of it. You know, the pupil, you give the pupil the option, can I just have another go? Yes, of course you can. What do you expect to gain from it? What is it we're looking for? Otherwise, we're just in the realms of learning your times tables. And we can all do 2 2s 4, 3 2s are 6, that's as far as I can go. But can you recite your 12 times table? You can remember the tune, it's the words that escape you. So it's not effective. So it doesn't embed things in the human brain. We learn through experience, and then thinking about, what have we learned from that? What would I do next time? You hatch a new plan and then you execute that. That's how you learn to walk. That's how you learn to talk. There was no lessons there. There was no video to watch. There was no instructor instructing you. You just got on with it and you learned really quick. So we learn fast this way. Then, is there anything else we need to have a think about? Now, you know, we did shave that parked car that we had a chat about. We did knock that cyclist over because you forgot how much room they've got to have now. We'll not start that one. So are we adding this to the plan, or does this replace the existing plan? If there's any doubt about it, you make that call, not them, because you're the driver training professional. That's what is expected of you on standards check, and that's what we should be doing in the real world, because we are the arbiters of safety. That is our responsibility. And then a review of your activity. Am I seeing it? Am I saying it? Am I sussing it? Am I sorting it? Am I going through that? Am I making sure that when we have the chat about something, we're not just saying, do you understand that? And allowing the pupil to go, yeah. You just say, it must be that the pupil then sees they have a new goal now. Yeah, I need to learn to do that. Because if you don't do that, that's not effective adaptation of the lesson. So we've really got to get the learner to see that, yes, that is something we need to work on. Yes, this is something that needs to be added in here. When a chap a while ago, he'd done his first 20 minutes on independent driving, had done a fantastic job, pulled over, had a chat about it. Says to the pupil, what do you want to do now? Well, can we just do a bit more of that? Yeah, okay. And got his backside kicked by the examiner, who said, what did you do that for? You'd nailed it. Why didn't you move on? You know, even if you just said, well, let's try it with the sat-nav now, I would have accepted that, but you've just gone and done 20 minutes of what you've just done. That's the wrong lesson for that pupil. So we need to make that call too. So no, it's time for us to move on. We're driver training professionals. That's what we're being paid for. Make that the way you normally work. It's easy, and it gets easier the more you do it. And you'll be amazed at how much you'll get from pupils once you start working this way. A whole new world opens up. And yes, you're all going to have that one in your diary that it's not going to work with. You know, where you open it and go, oh God, I forgot it was them today. We all have them. So, stuff that I do, here's the hard sell. Through my website, clientcenteredlearning.co.uk, I have a membership scheme which gives you access to everything. It's 30 quid a month. Try it for a month, have it for 2. Try it for 3 days for free. If you don't like it, just skip it, doesn't cost you anything. So there's a forum, the coaching stuff, driver development, conquering anxiety and stress. That's something we can help ourselves with, because driving instructors are not good at managing stress. And it's a stressful job, if you let it. Train the trainer stuff, and standards check and part 3 exam help. I also have standalone standards check courses. Some people prefer to do it that way. Some downloads. If you use the code show, all lowercase, that'll get you 20% off. Scan that, or take a picture of that, that'll take you to the website. Website address is underneath, or scan this one here. How are we doing for time? Ahead of time. Time for questions then. Do we have any questions? Fire away.
So I did watch one of your things online which was similar to this. I think you was like talking Howard and Chris.
Oh yeah.
So I failed second part 3 because notorious examiner, but it was what did you show me? That's feedback a lot.
Yeah.
What did you show me? And it was all the books say quite like what you're saying. When it's going pear-shaped, you need to be able to fix it.
Yep.
Nobody out there is saying, apart from you guys that have just like the roll now, when it's going swimmingly, that you need to adapt that lesson.
Absolutely.
You know, there's nothing out there saying you need to adapt. So as a PDI, I mean, you guys that did PST and have done like all these years, you know that you do. And as I said to the examiner, I've got 40 minutes slot. I've gone all through the coaching, taken in to my route, to my practice area, so I'm acknowledging all that, so I've got a decent trainer. So I've picked all of the crossings, etc. before I go to meet traffic. Then when I get there, I've given them 10 minutes round the loop, watching to see, and unfortunately...
And they've nailed it, yeah.
She drove like an absolute peach, made no mistakes whatsoever. So I kind of pulled over, asked her what she's thinking, and she's fine. So I've stopped, we had a review, gone round again, and I'm going to get back each one of the show. If
I had a quid for every time I've been sat in the back of a car and that situation had happened, I talk to people and people say, oh, it's going really well, isn't it? And the ADI says, yeah, it's great, that's smashing, what do you want to do now? We'll just do more of the same, yeah. And at that point I lean forward and go, stop, show me how you're earning your money. Do something. It's no good just drifting. That's schooling mum and dad. And sad to say, their pass rate isn't so different from ours. And that's because we work in similar ways. What do you want to do? Shall we just do that again? Yeah. No, your job is to sort stuff out. What you've got to think about at the end of any session, at the end of that 10 minutes, is the end product that you were responsible for, that you made happen. Yes, the learner's doing the learning, but we have to create the environment where that learning is possible.
I take it you just want to give them value for money.
Absolutely.
Every time
Absolutely.
You're thinking about every little task.
Yep.
You want to give them value for money.
And if you're delivering that way, well, you can put your price up, can't you? Because you'll have massive demand for your services, which will mean you'll have a waiting list, and then inevitably the price goes up. Oh, sorry, I thought you were going to ask. You were.
I was just thinking when you said value for money, and you're saying about adapting the lesson plan. When the candidate gets to the stage where they're ready to take the driving test, they should be driving independently.
Correct.
So how many lessons do they have independently driving before they take the driving test, and where's the value for money in that?
So what would you normally do during those lessons?
Well, I'll just review things and just keep practicing everything. So sometimes I'll do a test route with a sound switched off on the sat-nav.
Sure.
So make sure they're looking at the sat-nav.
So you are still adapting, you see?
Yeah.
So you're doing a lot of it without realising. So it's interesting. If you look at the series of lessons with Claire on LDC's YouTube channel, I'm saying to her, what do you want to practice? Oh, just have a drive around us. Well, there's got to be some purpose. You don't want to practice something in particular, like what, she says. Do you want to have a go at manoeuvres? No? Oh, why not? Because learners normally obsess about manoeuvres. So why would I want to practice something that I've already nailed? I thought, that's a good point. So we have to factor this in. We have to add more value. I would normally, with somebody at that stage, start introducing some advanced driving techniques, forward planning and anticipation, although we're doing that from the start, but some much more advanced stuff. We now have extra stuff that we can bring in, like motorways. So we're being handed that as an option. So as long as you're still doing something different, it's not good just trundling about, because they can do that with mum and dad. If I had somebody that was that way and I thought there's nothing left for me to teach them, I'd organise with mum and dad to do some practice with them, and I'll see you the week before your test. Then that's a more professional way of doing it, rather than thinking, oh, well, we've got 6 lessons here. And I always used to do the same. We're just trundling around, not doing anything, feeling guilty about taking the money.
Yeah, it's just trying to make that adaptation really.
That's right. So start getting creative. Start thinking of say to the learner, if there was one thing you could learn about, excluding everything else, forget about the test. If there's one thing you could learn, what would it be? And they'll start coming up with stuff like, wow, I'd like to learn how to use a car wash. Just like putting fuel in. How to change tyres. These are all useful skills. That's another one, yeah. So there's always something, because if you've done, you see, the thing is, if you get the learning out rather than putting the learning in, that lesson only ever happens once. You don't have to go back over stuff. Because the way that it works is, our map of the world is a whole load of synapses in our brain. And they're little nodules of learning, which are connected between what we know and what we don't know. So everybody's life journey is different to this point, and their synapse map is different. So what we've got to do is we've got to relate to their map of the world rather than ours. So it's all about, you know, getting them to use what they know to help them find out what they don't know and make connections. So that's just a very weighty subject. There's tons on the website. But that's how we learn, when a synapse is created. So we have to try and create activities that create synapses, that little nodules of learning happen. And we can't put that in. It has to connect with what's already there. So the more they're involved, the better it is. And if you've been training them this way all the way through, they'll come. If you have a look at a lot of the stuff, when they jump in the car with me, I just say, "What's the plan, man?" That's all I say. "Morning, what's the plan?" And they've got a plan. If they haven't got a plan, we make it up now. There's some fair. Yeah.
I was doing some part 3 training with my instructor,
Mm-hmm.
and after half an hour, it was raw rows limit points, and she'd nailed it.
Okay.
So I said, "I tell you what, you've nailed this.
Right.
We've got 10 minutes to go. Should we go via a different route? We can do some traffic lights, or we can do some." And she said, "I'd really like to carry on doing this, if that's okay."
Okay.
And I said, "Okay, fine. Then that's entirely up to you." The instructor said I would have failed because I didn't adapt the lesson.
You didn't adapt the
I
lesson.
said to her,
Yeah.
"What do you want to do?" And she
So
said,
are
"I
you
would
being
really like to carry on."
client-centered, or are you being client-led?
Well, I asked her. I'll just shut up. I'll give it codes.
No, no.
I don't know what else I could have done, because she said I'd really like to carry on.
What's
doing
your
it."
options?
Oh, I don't know.
So what did you do when you were practicing for your part 2?
I accepted the instructor, and the instructor said, "Well, you're not going to get anything out of doing this. Let's try something else." And I accepted his word for it, and we did it. So,
You ever used commentary driving?
no,
Okay. Have you ever picked the furthest point you can see and asked the people about it?
yeah. Okay.
And what did you get from that?
She kind of agreed with me. I said, "Yeah, I can see it as well. You know, what is it doing?" But my point was.
No, hang on. So you see you're moving away from that situation. What's your plan? What are you going to do if your plan doesn't work out?
Okay.
Anything else that might impact you? Are there any junctions between here and there? What's the potential hazards? There's always something.
You can come and train me for my part 3.
Yeah. Yes, I can. You scan on there.
But my point being that, as she said, I'm really happy carrying on what I'm doing, and therefore I didn't.
Quick head count of how many driver training professionals in the car. 1.
Yeah, it was him. It was the instructor.
Well, I couldn't possibly comment on that.
Yeah.
Talk to Stuart.
This wasn't an LDC instructor, by the way. So it wasn't. It was
Well, I know for sure it wasn't him. No, so it's, you see, we work in a world where we're expected to fix everything. The learners expect it. They think, well, I'll turn up, and driving instructors will just watch what you do and they fix stuff. That's in the past. What we do is it's much more dynamic. We watch what's happened, we have a conversation about the outcomes we got versus what we were expecting, and then set some new expectations and a plan to get to that. And it's constantly moving. An examiner sat in the back of your car would just put his pen down and just watch. I like this. This is good. So we don't want to give them a reason to pick the pen up. So working those dynamically in little loops. It is ridiculously simple. And the standards check is just the basics done well. And again, touching on something that Chris said before, people will say to me, "Oh, I was nearly there, I failed by 1. No, you didn't. If you didn't get to 31, your basics aren't right. So you might as well have failed by 30, because you're never going to get over 31 because the basics are not right. You're not involving the learner in the process, and you're not adapting it in a live sort of way. Have a look. Go ahead, fire away.
Yeah. So, just again, referring back to that video, it's on YouTube. I'll sell it for him. Email it in.
That's for free. You don't have to sell that.
Yeah. You were saying about like with the check test or part 3, whatever. If you hit the 31, you basically you've got it.
Yeah.
Basically, you missed it by a mark. But as you say, with that scoring, a lot of it is going to be sort of like 28, 29.
Somebody shows you a form that has 31 points in it. That's somebody who's got the basics right, but still wants work. And the examiner's thought, "I like what you do. I'll get you over the line."
Yeah.
Is what's happened there.
But the free, for me, it's that thing, and I is it so easy when you supposedly start with a 3
Yep.
to be getting 1s in those boxes? Why is it not hitting 2s before it goes to 1s?
A 2 is a reasonably solid performance that maybe you could do with some polish. A 1 is, I can see what you need to be doing, but you're not doing it. A 0 means you got no idea what you're doing. So a 1 means I can see you know what you're about, but I need to see more of that, or I need you to see it quicker. So we're not controlling the process on standard check. We're not helping the learning happen. Now, I'm conscious that the time's moving on, and Michael Carr will be here in a bit to start his.
I've got one more.
Fire away. I'll be at the DITC stand if you want to come and ask questions.
At the beginning of the lesson, what I often ask the candidate is, what do you remember doing last time? That's the way I tend to get them to.
That's right.
solve them.
Well, what you're doing then is, that's a reflective log, is it not?
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be written down. So those that don't like writing it down, just what was your favourite bit, least favourite bit? And a good one to ask, were you surprised by anything? In a good way and a bad way? You know, you get stuff like, I was surprised how easy it was. Well, I was surprised how scared I was. Scared? Yeah. Tell me about that.
I often get that on the motorway lesson.
Yep. Tell me what it was that scared you.
Well, about how easy it was rather than that.
Right, but yes, yeah. But so it's opening up that dialogue to find out what's going on inside their head. We often assume, well, I wouldn't be scared, and we assume somebody else isn't. You know, it's crazy. It's like, you know, it's like fear of roller coasters. My missus always holds the coats. She'll not go on there, and I just see that as irrational, but not to her, it isn't. To her, she thinks she's going to die. The same chances of dying for me, I'll just brush it aside. Whee! Because I'm an idiot. Thank you for your attendance. If you want to come and chat, I'll be at the DITC stand, and we'll see you all sometime soon. Oh, thank you.
TotalDrive is an award-winning driving instructor app for independents, multi-schools, pupils and parents. The app includes a powerful diary, free lesson reminders, progress records, reflective logs and more. TotalDrive is proven to help instructors earn more, work smarter and improve pupil pass rates. If you're a driving instructor, you need to try TotalDrive by starting your completely free 30-day trial at www.totaldrive.co.uk.